Welcome to Sexy Mom Abundant Life. What interesting times we're living in, right? And there's so much that's not under our control, but what is under our control is this moment, right? How we show up and respond to this moment. So with that, take a breath. You're here, you made it, you've been through hard things before. You'll get through this, right? One way or another. And so, even some sound is super good. I was teaching yoga online the other day, yoga to calm the nervous system. And I said, one of those things that's really calming for us that we don't think about too much is the sound, like just a lot of people think of Om in terms of yoga, but even just sighing, right, and verbalizing or sometimes like screaming is calming because it gets it out. So anyway, that's not the topic of today's show. But if there is a topic that you would like to see, I would love to hear from you at meetkathywilliams.com about this show, about any show, and you can find past shows there on the page. Radio, go figure. So I'm super excited today because my guest is Jósa Goodlife, and she's from New York City, surviving the big city and this time of being inside. And we are working together creatively. And I just thought it would be so much fun to have her on the show for a conversation about creativity and how we can channel like all this energy into, new and unique places and spaces. So I'll say a little bit about her before we get going. Has got a book in the works, and it's a beauty. It's very different, like very, very, very interesting way of presenting her journey with a tremendously challenging experience of having cancer. And so I'll let her say more about that if that topic arises. But Jósa's a healer and a creative in New York. She teaches Access Bars classes. She does, like I do, Akashic readings, which are super fun and amazing and revealing in a lot of ways. And she's a tremendously fun writer to read. So welcome to the show, Jósa. I'm so delighted to have
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. And I didn't say, you came from Iceland, you've lived in Copenhagen, you're quite how'd you end up in New York City?
Oh yeah, how did I end up here? Like 6 years ago. So I met a guy in Copenhagen. It's gonna be actually 9 years ago soon, I think. Yeah. And he's American, and so we had been together for like a couple of months when he actually lost his job in Copenhagen. And it's funny because he had just said, I hope I never have to move back to America.
Oh.
And then he just lost his job, and I was kind of like, wow, interesting. And so like a year later or so, he had to move back after not finding a new job in Copenhagen. And then, our fate was kind of like, rocking back and forth, like, are we gonna, what are we gonna do? And I kind of knew that we would have to get married in order to like just do this. And but we were definitely not ready. That was the funny part. So, it's kind of weird to, get married to somebody that you love, but when you're not feeling ready to get married, but in order to be together, you have to get married, right? So that's what we chose to do. And yeah, I've been here since, for 6 years in Brooklyn with him.
Well, and that's so interesting too, because just before this show, we were talking about Elizabeth Gilbert, and she wrote a book on that very topic.
Yes.
What's the name of it? It was the one that came out right after Eat, Pray, Love, and it was about marriage, and that and the challenge of it, and and that adventure. So but we were really talking about her as an author because of the book Big Love. I mean, not Big Love. We both love the
Big
book Big
magic.
Magic. We both love the book, which is why I said Big Love, but it's actually called Big Magic, and it's her
Mm,
process with creativity. And I think, for me, what I loved is that it confirmed a lot of my own like experiences with
yeah,
creativity.
absolutely. Same
Just
here. Hmm.
cool. Would you say more about that? What was that like for you, or what did she kind of confirm for you?
So I felt like, I read the Eat, Pray, Love, and that one changed my life completely. I actually traveled to India right after because I got so
Oh,
excited.
really?
And
Oh,
that was
why?
just before like all the whatever dramatic happened in my life right after. So I feel in a way that I owe Elizabeth Gilbert like a big thank you for bringing me out into the world by myself, like all the way to India, which I dared to do after reading her book. I got so inspired by reading her book. So when the Big Magic came out, I bought it here in the local bookshop in Greenpoint, and oh my God, I was so excited. I was like a little kid. I just knew somehow that there would be something in this book that I knew, but she was just able to verbalize it and put it together in a book. And it felt exactly like that, because I know, like, I kind of feel like connected to her in many ways. And it felt like, so, the big magic. I mean, how she's describing this, and it's in a way that is not necessarily super spiritual, but it
Yeah.
is overly spiritual. It's magic, right?
Yeah. 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 It's so interesting because I think the perspective of I was talking, I don't know, I was talking with a coaching group the other day, and talking about creating. Oh, I know who it was. It was in an interview. It was not a coaching group. It was in an interview. I was doing about creation, and a woman said, "So tell me how you create." And I was like, "Oh, well, it depends, of course, right? It depends
Mm,
on, was it an idea that was given to me verbally by someone else? Was it an idea that just kind of popped in my head, or was I teaching a class and then someone asked this
mm,
question, which I thought, oh, that needs to be its own topic or its own class? Like, the way we create, I think, depends on the circumstances of, first off, what are we creating? And so where the idea comes from is either a mystery, a complete mystery, like it just came,
mm.
or
Yeah,
or someone gave it to you, in some way,
yes,
or there was one idea that kind of led to, oh, well, I can put this and this together and create something with it.
yeah,
So Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic talks about, this poet who almost feels like she hears the poetry like coming
yes,
across the land, and it'll go through her, and if she doesn't run and get a pen,
mm.
which I'm like, why didn't she just always carry a pen and paper with her? but
Yeah.
if she doesn't run and get a pen, she will miss it, and it'll just travel
Mm,
on
mm,
without her. And so I love the idea of, a lot of times we think it's on us, like it's on me. The thing I'm writing is about me. Like, I'd
mm,
imagine you've even thought about that with your own book, like it's about
mm,
me, and it is actually your
mm,
story.
mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, about that, that was funny because for many years I struggled with not wanting to write this book. There was something in me that wanted to do it, but then I, like, as the year, like, it is because this is something that happened like 10 years ago. So it took me like the first 2 3 years. I was like, yeah, I knew it, because right when this happened, I was like, I knew that I had to make a book. I just, of course, did not know how it would show up or when. But I remember being like, because I have a tendency to try to push things away. I'm like, oh no, yeah, well, somebody else is going to do this better than I do. So I'm like, oh, there's so many books about this anyway.
Yeah.
So I would try to push it away, but the more that it kept, you know, it would almost take me up and shake me, like, and it was like literally. And then I started to understand. I was like, this is not about me, you know. Yes, a part of me wants to release, and you know, it would be fun to kind of just get it out. But when I started to realize the, you know, that it was kind of almost like the earth that was asking me to do this, or like there was like this existence, you know, that was asking me to do this. And then I started to really follow the guidance, and I took it serious. I started to take it seriously, you know, more seriously when I
I
realized
think
that.
I love that. It was kind of persistent, right?
Yeah,
Your
yeah,
idea was,
yeah,
it was like, hey,
yeah,
hey, hello,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
come on.
yeah.
I love that. I think so often people have an idea and, like you said, think, oh, well, it's been done before,
Mm.
right? And I even remember, gosh, reading something when I was probably 19 or 20, that someone was talking about, well, yeah, it's been done before, so you're not special, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
thinking, oh,
yeah,
okay.
totally. Yeah,
And
yeah.
letting that kind of inform like how I
Mm.
felt about life, about creation, about the world. Like, yeah, you're just not
Yeah,
special.
I
instead
know.
of instead of what if I had been given the idea, like, yes, it may have been done before, but not in your unique way. And that's what I'd
Mhm.
love listeners to hear. Like, yes, someone may have written about what you're going to write, but not in your unique
Mhm.
way. Or someone may have created a video series on your topic, or a radio show,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
a you know, even reupholstering a couch, right? Yes, it's
Mm.
been done before, but not in your unique way. And
Yeah.
it's not only about the end product, right? Like, a lot of times we
Mm.
think, oh, well, it's been done before, therefore I should just go watch
Mm.
Netflix or
Mm.
something, right?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But part of it's the process of
Oh my God,
creating, and
yes.
what you learn in that process, and what you uncover about yourself, and the
Mhm.
magic in the process of creation itself, that's
Yes,
irreplaceable.
it is.
Irreplaceable. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's to me. So about that, I can say that this is the one most surprising process that I've ever gone through in my life, you know. It is.
Would you
Because it's
say
also
more?
like, yeah, yeah, I can say more. So, you know, a story about, like, you know, a young woman who has just like gone through this like hysterectomy as a 32-year-old, and just knows that her life is going to be like super changed, like, and but we she doesn't have a clue how, you know. And then it just like, from there, you know, I knew that I had to do something about this, you know. It's like there was, oh yeah, so what came to me at that point was like, okay, if I'm not going to give, you know, if I'm not going to give birth to a baby in this lifetime, I'm going to give birth to a book, you know.
Oh,
Yeah, that was what came. So, and then from there, like, knowing that I would have to do this, I didn't know how, I didn't know when. I mean, literally this process has taken, it's literally 10 years ago, but it's when I passed the 10 years, like last year was really intense for me, because I felt like it should be out, it should be finished, it should be ready. But actually now what's going on is like much more interesting than I could ever imagine, because being editing the book right now, you know, with this amazing book fairy that I know, who you know, is doing a lot of amazing like coaching with me. It feels like this is like I'm going back through the process, but right now it's in this timeline where we right now, with whatever is happening with the coronavirus, we don't have a clue what's going to happen after. And it's exactly the same situation I was in 10 years ago, you know.
yes. Yes. That is super cool. And one thing that kind of came up for me when you were talking is that idea that you thought it should be created by now, right?
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it it should be done and out in the world. And
Mm.
how often we think that about our creations, like, oh yeah, you know, I'm off in the timeline. Like it should be done, or it should be different. Or
Yeah, and
instead of
how
like,
often do we stop ourselves there? We're like, oh, so I'm not going to do it.
yeah. Yeah, and the other thing that just kind of popped is we think that our audience is where we are. And what I mean by that
Mm.
is maybe not so much for a book about a journey with cancer, all right, where you're through it, and the people who
Mm-hmm.
are going to read it, a lot of them will not be through it when they're reading the book.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they will be, but you have something to
Mm.
offer. But a lot of times I think we've learned something, and so at we're writing about point A to point B, but we're already on C or D. So we think, oh, what's the point of writing about point A to point B, right? I'm already over
Mm.
here. And we neglect to realize that, oh yeah, but there are a lot of people who are still wondering about A to B. And
Mm-hmm.
so and so it is valid to keep writing about this and not just drop it and
Yes,
walk away. And I know we're
exactly.
talking a lot about writing, and you are not all writers. But everybody is creative. So when we get
Oh
back,
yeah.
because we're gonna head to break, we'll talk a little bit about inviting more creativity in various areas of your life, and also ways to stop stopping you if you are stopping
Mm.
yourself. So thanks so much for listening to Sexy Mom Abundant Life, and we'll be back in just a moment. Aloha. Welcome back to Sexy Mom Abundant Life, everyone. This is Kathy Williams, and today I'm having a conversation about creativity, unstoppable creativity, in fact, and playing on air with Jósa Goodlife. And we've been talking about writing. So if you're a writer, you're definitely going to want to go back and check out that conversation. We're going to enter a different sort of conversation now, more about like, what do you do when you are stopping yourself? And timelines, like expectations about timelines, which is something that we did start to talk about. Like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, this book isn't done yet, right? And judging ourselves or judging the project because it's not done. So, what do you do in that case? You mentioned you sort of realized that, oh, now's the time for your book to be happening, right? Even
Mm.
though you felt it should be done by now.
Oh
So,
yeah. That's a very interesting, I think for me, it kept on being like this just growing project. When I started to realize that, I had in the beginning, I had a seed, and then
mhm,
it became this
a
tiny
seed.
little plant, and I had to really take care of this plant. And now it's like it's a big bush, it's bush like of flowers. So, but um it was, I mean, luckily I work with a lot of like tools in order to know that I don't have to judge this, and I don't have to judge myself. I know there's a lot of like, creators out there that might not have these tools. So I sympathize. I hope you find hope you find tools to get you unstuck, and I know that Kathy is amazing coach to help you to get unstuck, in case you're stuck. And basically, actually, what happened to me was like you know, it's like big magic. It's like, the book Big Magic, how, what do you say? The roads, the paths of the universe are so like, you don't have a clue in a way. You have a feeling or a knowing about something, but you don't know how it's going to show up. So I would just have to keep on believing. I would have to believe that eventually, even though I would be 60 years old, this book is going to be ready. And if that, and I mean, I had this time frame 10 years, like when I started to realize, because there's something in the journey that showed me that it was 10 years. And, yeah, it was disappointing to me when I realized that I hadn't been working hard enough to get it out there, like to finish it in that 10 years. But now I'm like, once I went over, I started to have much more ease, actually. So
And when you
that's so
went over that
interesting.
10-year point, or when you went over what?
Yeah, the 10-year point, when I realized it's not gonna happen, now. And I would be like in this, like, I can't even, I can't even describe what feeling it was or what state it was. It felt like in a way that I was maybe highly pregnant and I couldn't give birth to the child. It was like,
Yes.
like constipated.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I'm gonna explode.
Anyone who's had a baby knows that feeling. You're like, well, maybe not if you have a preemie, but like those last few weeks are just like, okay, come on now, anytime now, like yesterday, please. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's something else that takes over. Like for me, it's something else took over, and that was just like this belief that it's gonna come when the time is right. And the magic for me right now, I have to say, if it would have been released last year, I wouldn't sit with this project now. And there's so much magic that is revealing right now, showing up because of this time that we're in. And I did mention it before, but I feel like I can't, like, that's, and now I'm just like, wow, that's why,
I love that. That comes down to, I think, two things, and that is trusting the timing, not like my timing superimposed on the project. Like when I was trying to name a book that I created, Relationships Done Easy is the title. When I was trying to figure out the title, which in fact I knew at the very beginning, but then I didn't really love it, and I wanted something cooler, I wanted it like now, right? I need it now. I need to know, like, clarity, and I need to know when the book is going to be released. Like, I want it done by December, right? And that is my mind's superimposed timeline. Like that's functioning from the shoulds. Okay. And when creative projects are happening, like, shoulds don't really exist because we all create so differently. Some people, like the song Alleluia was created over time with modification. It wasn't downloaded and then just came through. It was like this finely articulated, the beautiful masterpiece that took years, right, to be crafted. But then there are other, songs or pieces or like the poetry Elizabeth Gilbert talks about in the book, that just kind of, it's like a download. It just comes through and it's beautiful, and there it is. And that's how, when I was creating the class Radical Abundance, that's how I sat down and I did the manual in 2 hours, and then it was done, right? It was just like pouring through. And then over time, that was also shaped a little bit and modified and stuff like that. But it's like, when we're functioning through how creativity should work, we end up getting frustrated, because then we kind of feel like creatively constipated because it's not happening the way I think it should be happening, right? Which is not actually a problem, except that we make it into a problem. Right? Like,
oh yeah,
it's not done yet.
We are the worst. We make so many problems out of something that wouldn't have to be a problem.
And then, so what I love about, you said tools that we have. Some of the tools we have are questions.
Mm.
Like, how would this project like to show up?
Mm.
What could I add to it today? Any of us who has babysat or mothered a child, like, knows that you can contribute to that person, even a spouse, right? You can
Mm.
contribute to them, but you cannot control them into being what you want them to be. It will never work.
Mm. Exactly. And that's the power of, like, that brings me to what is actually I wanted to also mention is like how, each project is its own entity, each project has its own life form. I mean, and when I started to realize this, that this wasn't a book about me and my journey, like it wasn't about me, it was much, much bigger than that. And it's been showing so many surprises on the way, how it wants to show up. But when I start to honor that really, truly, and give that the space that it requires for me to understand how it wants to be,
Yeah.
that's when you're communicating, like with the child, what would you like to play with today,
I love that idea of honoring it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we each have different relationships with our projects, and for some people, creating is a very sacred act. For some,
Mhm.
it's very ritualistic, and for others, it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm driving in my car and I have ideas for the book, so I better pull over and dictate those before they go away, or just when I'm at a stoplight,
Yeah.
write a note to myself or something. It's like, we each have our own relationship with creativity that is okay and ours
Mhm.
and not wrong. And so I'm just super curious about what kind of tools you like to use when you are feeling a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure how this is going.
Mhm.
Or you're feeling a little blocked.
Mm. So after, like, when I realized that I'm a very untraditional, like, first of all, I'm not educated, right? Like, I've never even taken a writing course, other than like some like little ones online just for fun. But I haven't really, so I'm very non-ritualistic when it comes to every creation. I'm always wishing that I would be more ritualistic, but the funny thing is that I kind of end up laughing because I'm like, well, then I'm trying to wish to be something else. And, what about going ahead with just being who I am and following, maybe it's nice to have some kind of like, okay, I mean, for instance, now, working with my fantastic editor, I know that, she's going to poke me. Yes, yes. Well, Kathy, yeah, Kathy pokes. So if you haven't heard from me for like a week or maybe even 10 days, you're like, hey, what's going on? When next time? And I love it. That which means that, like, for me it works really well because I have a it's kind of what you call, it's a drive force, and I know that, okay, now is the time to just, and it doesn't even take so much. I mean, I'm not literally sitting and writing every day, I'm not. So that's also probably why it's been taking all these years, which is cool. That's the way how I function with this. But
Right.
yeah, what do I do? I mean, I use that as a force. I know that it's good for me to work with someone, definitely. And then
I want to add to that
uh-huh.
just for a moment, because I think it
Uh-huh.
is really useful to work with someone, and it's got to be the right person, at least
Oh yeah.
in my experience, because if you
Yeah.
tell somebody something about that you're creating, and maybe they have jealousy, or maybe they just have doubt, and that can kind
Mm-hmm.
of like poison the whole
Yes.
bathtub of water.
Absolutely. I know.
And yeah, so the idea of like allowing someone to know, I think also because a lot of us, when we make promises, when we say maybe, oh, I'm going to do this by X date or something like that, if you're like that, we'll do it if we say it to another person to keep our word. But if we say it to ourselves, like, yeah, I'm going to do this by Friday, and Friday passes and we've gotten nowhere, we're like, well,
I know.
Because we've made 17,000 promises to ourselves in the past that we haven't kept. So we're just used to it. Yeah.
Definitely. I know. But I think it's like, I feel like to me, it's, now I have a relationship with this book. So I feel like it's a lover that I'm neglecting if I don't go there,
I love that analogy. A lover that you're
Yeah.
neglecting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's a big part of me. I mean, it's also a part of me that I'm neglecting if I don't go there, because it is a promise that I made to me to eventually finish. And even like the finish right now, yes, it's somewhere out there. What is more important to me right now is to be in the process. I love being in the process. And that might even become scary to know now, like, oh my God, I'm going to finish this at some point, right? Yeah.
There will always be another project.
Yes. There are so many.
That's a really interesting thing, though. I've never really thought about, or, on this kind of level, that might actually be something that stops people. Right? Like, oh, I love this process, so I don't want it to ever end, so I'm just going to keep going on it endlessly. Yeah. I mean, for me, when I was editing my first chapter that was in a book, it was a chapter about moving to Hawaii. And just like that process of manifestation and creation. And I could have edited that for 40 years, but not because I loved the process and it was so yummy. I just wanted to milk it forever. It was more, I wanted to make it perfect, right? And I thought it was about me, like, instead of like, what gift is this chapter for those people who are going to read it? Which is a very different perspective from it's got to be perfect because people are going to judge it and then they're going to judge me. That's making it very me oriented versus like, oh, this is a gift for the people it's going to strike in that way and open something up for.
Yes, exactly.
So there's that. I think that perfectionism is a nail in the coffin type of thing, in terms of creative projects. And that is one of the things we can allow to stop us. But done is better than perfect.
Oh yeah, and that's I've heard this many times recently. So I love that. Which is also, right now, I mean, being in this book and honestly, I would never have realized that editing would be such a mofo project. Editing is much more than writing the F book. It's like it because it's the thing is like it's always changing, and then you do something in a chapter and you have to go back to the first one and just look at, and then you start re-editing. I mean, so I'm learning a lot from this, but it's kind of funny. That's something that reveals itself when you write your first book, I guess, like how that can be tricky. And what do you do with that? Like,
just ride the waves. Like, I think that the very process of creativity is like allowing it to come through, but then not being like super attached to one, how it ends up being, but also two, how other people receive it. Because how they receive it is filtered through all their filters of experience.
Sure.
So we're on a break already.
Yay! Wow, that
when we
fast.
get back, I'd love to talk about.
He talks so loud.
Welcome back to Sexy Mom, Abundant Life. This conversation today is about creativity, particularly in the time of, being isolated. It's possibly a good time to kind of like explore, where else can I apply my ingenuity, my creativity, maybe even creating something that helps people that's never been invented before. Who knows? I think
Mhm.
I read that comment that, there is no end to the ingenuity of the human species, which I think is so true. And so, as Jósa, my guest today, mentioned before we we went on air, how can we use all of this to our advantage? And I'd even beg the question, like, how can you apply the creativity that you have that may be going into freaking out, right? We're really good at painting monsters and then running from them in our heads. Like, how could you apply the creativity that you have in new areas, right, that are going to expand your life in different directions? And so we're going to explore some questions here in the last part of the show. And, I mean, I, and yeah, let's go there. So what kind of questions do you love to ask in regard to creating?
I first of all, like with a project, like a particular project, if I feel like, stuck or like something needs to happen, like, yeah, something that is awaiting to show up, then I would just basically ask that project, like, what do you require? I like to ask that question. But on the other term, like, if you don't even know what you don't have a clue what you're going to create, I mean, first of all, I would ask, like, what would be fun? What would be fun for
Yeah.
me? What would be fun for me, and what would be fun for maybe the world? Even though you never even have to show it to the world, but imagine that you would do it, and yeah, and what is there, like a tiny little talent that I kind of have a feeling that I have, but I've been neglecting it? That I could, observe a little bit just to explore it and see where it takes me. And you don't, and please, no conclusions, because that's, whenever you have a conclusion, that's going to stop you in track instead of just opening up the doors.
I love that. I really love that. And it makes me think of a client I worked with. Oh, I worked with her for years. This was probably like 15 years ago, that this experience happened. And she came to me because at that time I was doing a lot of in-person coaching sessions. And she came and I said, what would you like to work on today? And she said, I'm really free form today. I don't have anything specific going on. So I said, well, in that case, I have some ideas. We could do this or this or this. I rattled off like a handful of things. And she said, well, any of those except dancing, right? I don't want to do dancing. And so I said, well, then I'm going to suggest something that we do dancing. Yeah, like,
Yes.
I'm a very, very, what do you call it? Like, non-threatening person.
Yeah,
like,
right.
and so let's just play with this a little bit, since there are some hangups.
Did she have fun with it? Can I ask you? Did she
Oh
have
my
fun
gosh.
with it?
It's Jósa. She ended up like later, like 5 years later, entering dance competitions.
What?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like,
see,
what have you decided about yourself? Whether you've decided you can't cook or sing, right? So many people have hangups about singing. And it's because their brother told them in second grade that they couldn't sing or something ridiculous like that. It's like, well, maybe you can't sing yet, right? But with some training, maybe you can't paint yet, but if you watch YouTube videos and you just follow the instructions, like, I mean, it's like, or you don't even watch YouTube videos. You're like, well, if I could paint, how would I paint?
Yeah.
And then you get some paint and you just do it.
Yeah. That's a
And see
great
what
question.
emerges.
Yeah. I know. And, it's funny because I remember also at some point I was like, I don't know, I'm a funny creator. All of a sudden I was like, okay, I have these, like, there's a kid was playing with a Play-Doh thing.
Yeah,
Like
Play-Doh.
or modeler, what do you say? Yeah, Play-Doh. And but it was like this sculpey thing. And I started to realize, oh my God, I was like, wow, if I do something with this, it's going to show up like something that I remember wondering a lot about as a kid. And then I was like, oh, it's really like, that's just a kid. But then I was like, I got so obsessed with the idea that I started creating it. And I ended up starting making like jewelry out of it because it was
Really?
so fascinating. So I would encourage people to go and say like, hey, what did I really enjoy as a kid? Or like, see it, just ask that question and see what shows up, because you might not even know yet, but then all of a sudden something shows up.
It's so true. Like just exploring. Maybe your friend creates jewelry, or you see this jewelry that like you're like, "Oh, I would love to do that." Or,
Yes.
cooking is kind of an easy one because it's like you've got to eat, or maybe you don't have to eat, but most people have to eat. And so it's like, how could I add a splash of creativity to that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just like, 'cause I mean, to me it's really sad that art class and music and dance and those things are some of the first things to go from school
Mm-hmm.
curriculum, because those are where we get to kind of express things that, I mean, even like traumas, right? A friend texted me uh some month ago and and wrote like, John Lennon and Paul McCartney both had their mothers die when they were really young, which is
Wow.
interesting because my friend
Yeah.
is a very well-known musician as well, and he had his mother die
Mm-hmm.
when he was young. And it was
Mm-hmm.
sort of like how much of our challenges are
Mm-hmm.
channeled into creation, like
Mm-hmm.
you and your cancer, and like
Mm-hmm.
there is so much that can come out of what we've been through in our life
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And art is therapy. Creation is
Oh
therapy.
my God. And that's like, that's what everything, when I started to realize that my book is about that. My book is about, actually, hopefully at some point helping people to take something and, what would you like to do with your story? How would you like to play with your story? And that can actually also be an amazing thing to do right now. Like find something from your life that you have like maybe neglected. It doesn't have to be anything traumatic, or it can be a little story from when you were a kid or a teenager, and play with it. See what you can create. Maybe you will draw a picture from it. Maybe you will want to cook a meal from it. I don't even know. It's like there's no limits. Creativity, there's no limits, and that's what we love about it.
Yeah. 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 So it's not only therapeutic, but it expands our lives, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like something that may have been buried deep inside or painful and wounding gets to
Mm-hmm.
kind of grow into something else that actually, inspires.
Yeah, and I can say it just for myself because now, in my book, there's also going to be some painting and collage art, and that's something that I would never have like. Well, I mean, I know that I'm creative. I used to draw really well and stuff like that, but I would be like, So it's so easy, guys, to say I am not a painter or I'm not a writer, and therefore I can't
Yeah.
do this. But that's such a lie. That's not true. Um, but I would encourage everyone, no matter, like, just to take a piece of paper and find some colors if you have them somewhere around. It can be like crayons, or it can be like what are they called, like not oil colors, but the other, like the um
Watercolors or
what I yeah, watercolors or whatever that is, and then
Pastels.
just, pastel, just put the brush on a piece of paper and just see what happens. It's like, and then you can even throw it out after, but it sparkles this specific feeling in my body, at least, and I know a lot of people, it's like, and you don't know exactly what until you do it.
And especially right now, I mean, there's so much that needs to move through us that I think feels a little
Yes.
stagnated. That
Yeah.
that doing what you suggest sounds like a really cool way to get that flowing.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned, we think I'm not an artist or whatnot. On my birthday, there's a little painting place in our town where they guide you kind of step by step through painting something and turn on music, and it's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And those are pretty popular right now. But we took
Yeah.
my mother on my birthday, and she's like, well, I can't paint, and we ended up doing this tree with cherry blossoms, and hers was the most beautiful one. And I'm like, you probably
Wow.
haven't painted in like 50 years, but yours is like the
Wow.
best.
That's
And of course, that's just
amazing. Yeah.
my opinion, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, what have we decided we can't do that we actually can do? And it's kind of rewarding or fulfilling to do,
Yeah.
right? Just to create. Yeah, so we're wrapping up the show. I just wanted to mention, like, where and just kind of shine our awareness in the direction of, let's pause and acknowledge where we do apply our creativity. Maybe that's at work for some of us, or with our kids, or kids we know for some of us, or maybe that's in our garden, or cooking, or design.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you apply your creativity? And where could you allow that to trickle into that you haven't yet? And where
I
could you
love
allow it
that.
to expand more?
Yes.
Yeah.
And where do you not have to stop yourself anymore? I
Yeah.
think like this time that we're in right now, we can't keep on stopping ourselves. That's like, because now we've been literally stopped by, on the planet, everyone are kind of stopped in a way, but to me that doesn't mean stop and stagnant. It actually means, where have you been stopping yourself? Where have you decided that you can't do this? You may be stuck in a job for like many years and you haven't been happy, and all of a sudden you lost the job. So looking into like, where have I been stopping myself that I don't have to stop myself anymore, and
I love
creatively.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uncork.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, Jósa. Where can people get in
Mm.
touch with you?
Oh, so I'm in New York, but I have a webpage, goodlifecreation.com, and right now I'm doing some readings and some work online, and I'm also, if people are curious just to see the book, like what it is, I have a GoFundMe page for the book. So it's
Cool.
a GoFundMe.com, and it's a /healing story.
Healing Story. So
Yeah.
gofundme.com/healing story. And then you
Yeah.
are at Good Life Creation, no S, just
Yes.
goodlifecreation.com.
.com.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank
And
you so much.
it's been a delight to have you on the show. And of
Absolutely.
course, I love to hear from listeners as to, what this struck in you. If you have questions about the show, or topics you would like to see on the show, I'd love to hear from you. And you can do that at meetkathywilliams.com. Also coming up is a Write Time class. If you want to get your words out onto the page or into the world, the Write Time is a super fun way to do it. So just yes.
Yes, it is.
Oh, all right. Well, if you can't wait till next Thursday, find us on SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and at iom.fm. That's where all the replays are. Have a great week, everybody. Stay well and happy as best you can, moment by moment. There's so much to be thankful for. All right. Aloha.
Aloha.